Hello YouTube, it's me again, and I hope you all had a lovely New Year's Eve. Welcome to 2019, and let's get this ball rolling. As you probably guessed, if you've been watching my videos for a while, I keep talking about this video, and it's finally happening now. So I'm here with my friend Raegan.
Hello.
Raegan, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yes, I I don't feel as though I'm qualified totally to talk about this subject, but pretentious drivel is my speciality.
Okay, that's fine.
And I'm, so I can make something up.
Okay.
That sounds as though it would be true.
Most of the time it is true. Alright then, so this is been a long way video. Wanted to get this done off my chest for a while, but I've always wanted to find the right person that I know that just helps to clarify a lot of the points it's saying, and whether it's going to be some of you agreeing with it or some of you completely disagreeing with it, that's the beauty of debating. So, let's go into it. This is the social class of Goth. Now we're going to start off from the beginning of it. We're talking about the 70s punk influence, which helped inspire the 80s trad goth influence, and as I explained in my Witch House video, that styles from every 10 years, it normally incorporates from a trend or a fashion sense was happening back then. And obviously, as we know, with the punk fashion, it was very much DIY, make your own type of shirts,
distressed clothing, charity shops, second hands, hand-me-downs, layering, painting, DIY.
Yeah, distressing, and then obviously the trad goths kind of influence that same style. When you have bands like Specimen doing it, you also have like, well, even Bauhaus, they even went to that charity shop type of fiasco as well.
Yeah.
And then obviously it got more extreme to that extent. Is there anything else you wish to add in?
Well, I don't know how relevant it is, but we were saying about how Susie Sue, her look was quite inspired by Vamp, Feeder Barra and things like that, or at least I think it is.
Yeah.
I think I see the visual connection there. I don't know. She might disagree, but sorry. But yeah, that sort of 20s Vamp era and certain Victorian influences you find in that kind of new romantic aspect. They're but I suppose that's going into more when you talk about the commercialization, with it becoming more mainstream and more of a commodity, with like Malcolm McLaren.
Yeah.
Well, that was more punk, but when you had punk first, and then New Romantic, I believe, came a bit later.
Yeah, New Romantic did come shortly afterwards when New Wave became more the scene.
But a lot of that, I feel like, they started off in punk, and then they became, like, as they carried on, they turned into more kind of new wave, goth, New Romantic,
all
gothic,
that type of stuff.
yeah.
But that's the beauty thing, because all those subcultures that we just said, they came mainly from a lower class background.
Yeah.
So punk was very working class, goth was very working class, because they were basically one of the same branch.
Yeah.
But then, as you mentioned, with Malcolm McLaren, Vivian Westwood opening up the sex shop and turning it all into a commodity.
Commercialised commodity, high end, relatively.
Yeah, basically.
Not cheap. Not like charity shop hand-me-downs.
No, basically what Camden is nowadays. But the problem is, though, if you were to speak to someone who was a teenager or someone in their 20s back when the sex shop came around and punk became more of a commodity in the 80s, then they'll say that is not true punk, and you understand why.
Yeah, a lot of I think, was it... Right, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was an interview with Adamant, saying about how he started off playing in the punk clubs, and then when he became more mainstream, he lost a lot of his fan base because it was seen as more mainstream, which wasn't the idea of punk. There's that song about Top of the Pops, isn't it? Everybody's on Top of the Pops.
Yeah. Oh, I can't remember that one on the top of my head now.
Yeah.
But obviously, because...
Not by Adam and the Ants, it's by somebody else, I can't remember.
No, I can't remember. But obviously, with this commercialization of lower class artistic subcultures, it then became something to profit on. And this is when, even working up into the 90s, when we have goth becoming a lot more commercialized, when you have goth stores coming up, when you have the goth label becoming more mainstream. So, for example, let's take Neil Gaiman's The Sandman with Jeff as a character.
Yeah, definitely. And then obviously obviously Marilyn Manson, who a lot of people don't consider to even be goth, but he brought that sort of aesthetic, and I think that's kind of the point where a lot of it became less about the music and more about the aesthetic and the fashion sense. Which a lot of people, I mean, obviously still argue it's about the music, which I think it is, but that was kind of the point at which people started focusing more on the dressing all in black, eyeliner, things like that.
Well, then don't forget, you also had loads of films in the 90s come out, like The Crow and The Craft as well, portraying that gothic type of image. Beetlejuice as well, late
that
80s,
was,
early 90s, but it still gave this new persona, this new
and
darker edge.
Obviously there's like Tim Burton films, Tim Burton, Nightmare Before Christmas, things like that, and then because I used to go to the goth shops and get things like Ruby Gloom, Emily Strange, the big goth dolls, which are a bit like rats but with new rocks.
But then at the same time, all this type of like commercialization and this popularity gave the birth to, say, different goth stores. Like in Birmingham we have the Oasis Market, which has been around since the 80s. I know that America has Hot Topic, which is like the more goth breed.
We had like Blue Banana, but then that became more sort of the emo scene thing. Yeah,
it went through a horrible shed of skin during the 2000s.
But didn't we all?
but that's the beauty of it, because even for teenagers in the 90s who became this type of more goth persona, they still had to have some type of money or anything like that to look like Eric Draven or
it was
Twin Ramirez.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, particularly for kind of younger generations who are newer to it and people in their teens, they think they have to buy new stuff. And there's also kind of a lot of people don't like the idea of going to a charity shop and getting things or doing things from scratch, because it's very kind of instant. You know, you want things straight away nowadays with this culture of like, you know, instant sort of satisfaction and getting things instantly. So a lot of people don't want to take the time, or they think like there's a bit of a snobbery when it comes to charity shops and things like that.
But I find it quite ironic, especially with in the 90s, when obviously God became more middle class, you had to have a job to basically afford this stuff, especially for those who were in the 90s who just came out the 80s as teens or in their 20s. They ended up having a job, they had to turn down their look. They have to even have a good paid job to still keep the lifestyle going.
Because you can't go with sort of like a death look and eyeliner wings out to your temples as much as you want to.
No, exactly.
As much as I would.
But obviously it's a case of, if you had to look good in the 90s, even to nowadays, if you look at Oasis, for a good example, a lot of this stuff, even Victorian stuff nowadays, which is now becoming more popular again, is bringing this type of, it's
upper
pricey.
Class. Oh yeah. And don't get me started on inaccurate Victorian outfits, like corsets over the top of, oh gosh. But yeah, it's very expensive, very, very expensive. I mean, even things like corsets are quite popular. They're very expensive, especially if you get a good one. Maybe that's just me. I like really strong, tight lacing ones. But yeah, so that's expensive. A lot of skirts and things, really, really high end stuff.
But we were saying this earlier about, you made the good distinguish between the middle class goth subcategories like Victorian and bondage. But
oh yeah, you find that with a lot of modern gothic fashion, just fashion, because there aren't. I feel like, as well as I was saying, in the 90s, they made more of the focus on the aesthetic and less on the music, whereas I think the music's making somewhat a bit of a comeback amongst the youth, so to speak, if that makes sense. A lot of people are getting more into the kind of trad side, the original side, but I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, even music side. I mean, if you listen to Witch House music, it's very influenced by loads of the post-punk and dark wave bands.
Yeah, definitely. But also with the fashion, in modern gothic fashion, there tends to be two sort of main strands. One which is sort of like borderline fetish bondage stuff, lots of chains, lots of things like that. and then sort of pseudo-Victorian or like almost steampunky, kind of stuff. There is a lot of, I see quite more kind of authentic punks walking around, like original. I say authentic, I mean it's sort of a fluid, ongoing thing. I'm not like, but yeah, the two main strands of modern Gothic fashion that you see are those kind of pseudo-historic kind of outfits. And then I feel like in the 90s there was a lot more sort of medieval stuff going on.
There was,
like medieval goth, and now you see a lot more like pseudo-Victorian steampunk.
Well,
maybe that's just me, I don't know. I'm still all about the shoulder pads.
Oh, you can't be shoulder pads, but
no,
it's like...
I had to take them out.
It's kind of like what I was saying about how loads of the middle class goths, especially in the 90s, wanted to dress quite Victorian-esque, but obviously that type of love for macabre and fascination with death in their fashion was very upper class at that era.
It was very, very upper class and kind of mourning outfits. But what's interesting as well is that in the Victorian era, a lot of the outfits were handmade from patterns because that's what they had to do. So that was DIY. But people don't have the time to do that nowadays, which is why they tend to buy new things at an extortionate price. Or if they do have the time, they don't really have the inclination. But I think that's why people tend to pay more for the convenience of not having to make it nowadays, which is why it becomes more expensive and more of a like less of a lower class cheap thing to do. Unless you're like me and raid Compton Hospice for most of your free time.
Of course, but already we're seeing this nice transition from when what punk and goth meant back in the 70s and 80s was genuine to a subcultural social class stance. It was rebellion. But as anything that's become more popularized, it will become commercialized.
Yeah.
So obviously now we're seeing this transition where goth and punk is now becoming something of an edge, basically.
Yeah, and it becomes more expensive. I think not a bit because of convenience. So because people think there's almost this idea that you have to buy it new, and I find that really or to like buy it without doing the DIY.
No, but that's a good thing nowadays, because about 5 years ago when the death rock revival scene came out, you have loads of people going back into this DIY format. But even then, it's very contradicting in many ways, because all these people, as we're both students, we claim to be poor, but they were not poor enough to.
But they spend money on things like Killstar, Dolls Kill. Dolls Kill, really, really expensive. The boots, expensive. Winkle pickers, goth pikes, expensive. I love them. Fantastic, good investment, but expensive. And what was I going to say? So, but you also see, because there's this kind of revival of 1980s or late 70s sort of fashion in high-end brands, such as you see it in Versace and other brands like that. And then when you see high-end brands bring out those sort of fashions, you get the cheap knockoffs in stores, and then you get them in cheap stores, so you get sort of cheap commercialized knockoff pseudo alternative clothing in like cheap Wolverhampton £2, which I'm happy with because I don't like to pay for it.
I'm wearing a Killstar shirt now, but I've always been someone for the DIY format, as most of my followers know. That's whenever I have the chance, I'll always distress my clothing and make my jackets up. It's not because it's more aesthetic, it's a case of like,
it's fun, creative outlet.
It is.
I do that. I do sort of distress things, but also I like almost like high-end 80s yuppie fashion juxtaposed with that kind of post-punk lower class sort of aesthetic with ripped tights, and then sort of like dressing like Joan Collins at a funeral with distressed clothing. And then it's that kind of juxtaposition. But I like sort of expensive things but cheap, second hand, but then I will distress them and things like that.
Of course. I mean, one thing I do want to bring up, and I know I normally don't talk about any form of politics on my channel, but what do you think about this like notion that it's this identity politics notion that that you can't be like creative or being an alternative subculture if you're middle class or lower class. This notion that identity politics is so...
It is, I mean, it's a vast generalisation. There are a lot of vast generalisations that are made, and the thing is, people are individuals, so the idea, you know, the idea that people can't be creative and...
Because they don't fit a certain social class.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I think that's where it's going in now, because obviously we're going to reach like the higher class of what goth is. Not just a case of a subcultural point of view, but from like the fashion excess. Like you brought out earlier about Mana Summer's Gothic Lolita.
Yeah, Gothic Lolita, that kind of upper class Gothic Lolita, very, very, very expensive. You could probably pay a large amount of rent just to own an outfit.
Well, that's, you know, with loads of Mana Summer's makes, Mana Summer doesn't incorporate all styles. He literally goes for quite small sizes, so it's quite elitist in that aspect, because that's the imagery that Gothic Lolita has. Which is this, it's going to go back into the identity politics, where if you're going to dress Gothic Lolita, you need to be skinny. It's a type of notion that's kind of set into
which
it.
is interesting, because there are a lot of kind of stereotypes that go around about things like that. But there are a lot of kind of weird expectations. Like for example, it's almost controversial to have natural hair and natural hair colour and be part of an alternative subculture for some reason. Yeah. Like people actually get angry over the fact that I have like mousy hair and not black hair. Why? I don't know.
But that's the thing though, with certain like high ends, especially as you mentioned Killstar before and Doll's Kill, you will find that it is quite overpriced, because once again, especially with New Goth becoming into fashion, this type of love for distressed clothing and this whole quote unquote individual and technicality, where they're basically taking the aesthetics of 70s and 80s goth and trying to distress everything and making it more mainstream.
Charging more for basically like half a top.
Yeah.
You know, with some holes in. I remember I went to I think it was like H&M, and they had some really nice sort of Joy Division like jumpers and things, but actually that was what was it weird to me, and this is probably why you get a lot of people wearing like Joy Division merchandise and not really ever heard of the band or listened to the band. It's because they had kind of Joy Division kind of merchandise, but it was really sort of maybe it wasn't kind of darkly inclined merchandise, if that makes sense. It wasn't like what, maybe that's me making an assumption about what somebody who would listen to Joy Division would wear. Maybe that's me being judgmental, but it you know what I mean? It wasn't.
But we've had it with the whole hipster scenario. You have the hipster stereotype of wearing an unpleasures top because it's an edgy like thing, and that's where once again where commodity comes in and kind of blend into a meta commodity.
Yeah, well, sometimes you get charged more for something that's basically just got a few holes in it, which you can do yourself.
Exactly. I mean, it's funny that we're talking about this type of fashion, because we also spoke about like the job entitlements, like you mentioned about alternative modeling and makeup artists. as well.
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of people say, for example, if you want to keep your aesthetic, like quite an extreme aesthetic, don't know what's going on with my hair, but you don't want to compromise your sort of, you don't want to compromise your lifestyle, you still want to earn money and have a job. A lot of people, I think it was sort of a couple of years ago, you saw a surge in kind of alternative modelling, cosmetology students, people who are doing like makeup and hair and things, because they wanted to keep their aesthetic but not have to compromise on, you know, earning money, which is fair enough. People want to do that, but it kind of leads on from if you need a job, whereas it like people in the 90s toned down their look, but then it was you know, in order to get a job, but then you find people they don't want to compromise their looks, so they think, what can I do? I work in a goth shop, do alternative modelling, be a makeup artist, things like that.
And that's where we get this new strand of social media celebrities.
Social media influencers, yeah.
But this is the thing though, it's like when I say this, I don't want people to think that these social media celebrities are any richer than us. I'm just saying that the platform that they have is a lot higher than we do.
The thing is, they have a lot of expensive clothing and promote it, but the thing is they would probably get, I would imagine, a lot of it through PR anyway, so it's not, well, I would imagine so, I don't know, but then they're promoting brands and things that are quite expensive. Maybe I'm just really cheap, I don't know.
But that's the thing though, it's like, as you mentioned with Door Backbats and Black Friday, you use certain hashtags as well.
Oh yeah, was it something like upper class goth or something? I think, yeah. See, I love to follow them. It's just I don't tend to like to pay for those sort of expensive brands. But a lot of it's things like, as I said, like pseudo Victorian as well. Whereas I would rather go to a vintage shop and get an original morning outfit or something that's probably laced with arsenic and could make me very ill. But I suffer for fashion.
But that's the thing though, it's like not just in fashion but also like in the social sides where when you see like these upper class like social media famous goths attending certain festivals or clubs and everyone flocks to them.
And it's expensive. Like you have to travel, you have to afford to travel, go to festivals. You see things that like market stores and stuff that are selling gorgeous things. I mean, some of the like headpieces and like some of the things, for example, it's Black Friday, has modeled some gorgeous outfits that I couldn't ever have. Well, no, I could, but it's more so like for me, I prioritise if I think I could get something from the charity shop, DIY it.
Of course.
But
that's the thing though, it's like not even just like about travelling and all that, but it's like when you meet them in person.
I haven't, but
it's like, you know what I mean, they have this social platform.
Yeah, definitely, but it's sort of like almost celebrity status.
Well, it's more
which just gives the impression of being somewhat elevated, even if you are quite, even if you're really sort of.
Well, it's an attributed celebrity status more than anything.
Well, you could say that about any kind of social media influencer, because it's a very new. The reason why people are sort of hesitant to call them celebrities, so to speak, is because it's a very new form of fame. Social media, it hasn't been around all that long, so the notion of social media influencers is quite new, but in a way it's a sort of celebrity on a underground level. Yeah. In a way.
But I do want to bring this one up because I know there are many people in my comment section who are going to reply with the whole social media fame is not higher class goth or anything like that. But this is where we're going to go in. This is where we're going to go into now with like high design brands. We touched on
more so like hierarchical in a way than high class. I think a lot of people associate it with things like when you talk about a class structure. There's a difference between a kind of a hierarchy and sort of the amount of money, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I find with social media.
Sorry about that. We've just kind of cut off my phone and said no more storage days, so we just had to get rid of a few things on my phone. Got rid of some memes. But yeah, if you want to just quickly brush up on what you were saying before we cut off.
Oh yeah, I was saying about the difference between you know, that kind of hierarchical class and assuming that they have a lot of sort of excess income. I mean, I was saying about social media influencers, they aren't necessarily sort of super rich or anything like that, but they promote quite expensive brands which they might have brand deals with and things like that. So they're not necessarily 100% paying full price for all of the things, but they will, you know, for the average consumer to buy them, they are quite expensive brands to promote. But if you're comparing money and that kind of hierarchy.
Well, and this is where we're going to come to when it comes to, like, say, fashion designers that were very influenced by the goths, so who lived into the goth culture as well.
Yeah.
So, like, you wanted to bring up.
It was well, I'm just a fan of who's it? I don't know how to pronounce this. Thierry Mugler?
I think it is.
I think it is. I don't know.
Apologies for the mispronunciation.
Uncultured. Well, I'm a personal fan because he had, he carried on into sort of the 90s. I think he's still going. Yeah, he's still going, but it's more sort of perfumes and things like that, I think. Anyway, but yeah, very dark. That kind of. I like his work for the silhouette, like the shoulder pad, waist, hip.
There's quite like
like Glenn Close's Corella DeVille kind of a thing. But very lots of black monochromatic, some PVC type things. I love that. As I said about Versace, you see some on the Instagram, certain punk influences in certain pictures. I believe certain kind of Balenciaga potentially has some things that are more kind of leaning on New Romantic purely because, and that's if you sort of class New Romantic as kind of a Gothic thing, because Goth is sort of
partly influenced by New Romantic.
Yeah, exactly. Because they have quite. I mean, it was kind of described as meme clothing in some instances, but they have quite an over-exaggerated silhouette, which is something that's quite common in New Romantic fashion, or was quite not common in New Romantic fashion, with people such as people like Klaus Nomi,
even his makeup is what drag.
Yeah. I was going to say about bold makeup looks are coming back in, but that's more, I think, linked to the popularity in sort of drag art and things like that, drag artistry. But you see a lot of post-punk and New Romanticism influences in that. I was going to say about fashion designer, fabulous bloke, drips down his face. What's his name? Bald head, drips down his face.
Oh, you're thinking of Lee Bowery.
Lee Bowery, yes. Lee Bowery, exaggerated silhouette. That's what I was going to say about. You see a little bit of a resurgence of that, resurgence of 80s fashion in particular, which has that kind of, you know, or late 70s punk, New Romantic.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And I just want to finish off on Olivier Feskens, who's a Belgian artist who was, if you look at him, he was quite gothic himself, long black hair, quite metal gothy-ish. He was very influenced by the Gothic style back then. You can clearly see a lot of the work in his most recent dresses and designs he makes. It's still quite black and thin corsets, very modern, casual Gothic, which is this new type of aspect of what Goth is going for. Even if you like Celebrity Stairs, as you mentioned, Katy Perry and Rihanna.
Oh yeah, there are certain sort of music video or you know, shots where you see kind of New Romantic makeup looks, or you know, clear influence. I was just going to say something off on.
No, it's okay. Well, just to save the phone from wrapping up again, so hopefully we've established the difference between like the social class of Goth that we all know, the middle class, which we more or less, anyone who's watching this is still part of, and then clearing and identifying the upper stages of Gothic fashion and Gothic social fame as well. So I hope that you enjoy this. We're very sorry for all the cutting and pausing because of my fucking storage. But we hope you enjoyed this. Raegan, thank you so much for having me on this.
Thank you for letting me talk pretentious drivel. If it made any sense.
Of course it made sense. It made a lot more clear sense than what I would say.
Oh,
so,
well, thank you.
Right then. So, you're welcome. So then, I'll catch you very soon, YouTube. Hope you enjoyed the video. Share, like, subscribe, all that bullshit. You know, don't care about that type of stuff. Just enjoy the video and see you very soon.